Hello and welcome to another episode of Cab Chat. I'm Jamie the cabbie, and he, as always, is...
I'm still Tom the taxi driver. Oh,
You're
yeah.
still Tom the taxi driver.
Still Tom the not Tom the cabbie, not Tom the twat. Straight off the bat. Oh, dear. If that doesn't get us demonetized, who knows? But we're not monetized, which is something that you guys could help with.
Definitely. Only 59% of you that watch our videos are not subscribed. So please subscribe. It does really help us out. Anyway, what are we going to be talking about this week, Tom?
Well, Twitter's blown up a little bit in cabbie land because of one proprietor who said that I'm going to be putting up prices of cab rentals for the first time in 10 years. So we're going to break down it, has it been 10 years? Is this justified? What's the landscape of renting a cab? Maybe we've got some new knowledge students who want to listen to this podcast, know a little bit more about it. We're going to go deep on all this.
So basically, the proprietor in question was saying that he's got to raise the cost of renting a cab out because of increased costs of running the business due to government regulations that are coming in. And I presume he's talking about making tax digital and all that sort of thing. Which is obviously increasing costs for all of us, and also time as well. It's taken up a lot of time to do making tax digital.
I don't know if it's necessarily making tax digital because obviously as a limited company, which I assume, so the garage we're talking about is Colts Cabs, is they'll be limited, so it's more on a owner to the driver, anyone who's self-employed who do making tax digital. But there's always little sneaky things that come in any government that can affect any business. You look at a few years ago when employer national liability was raised from 12.5% to 15%, which then means it's something that the employer then has to pay an extra 2.5% for every single employee they have. And rather than employees getting a pay rise, the employer gets stuck with it. So I'm sure it's just more things like this, which I can't possibly fathom because I don't run a business with multiple people and assets and things like that,
Also, national minimum wage went up as well.
Yeah.
So that's an increased cost on an employer. Other things that are going up in cost are parts supply, the supply of parts. Because of what's going on in the world at the moment, the cost of buying in parts has gone up quite considerably. Even the price of oil to service a cab has gone up dramatically. I mean, you wouldn't believe the cost of oil to service a TXE. It's absolutely unbelievable, the cost of oil. It's like buying liquid gold, really. So all of these things combined increase the proprietor's costs, and also the cost of a new cab's gone up as well again. I think they're like 78 or nearly £79,000 now, if you can actually find one. To purchase, because I know a lot of them have been saying that they wanted to buy new cabs and there wasn't any left to purchase. So all of these things combined increased the proprietor's costs, which means at some point the rent has got to go up. It's inevitable. With costs going up around the world because of what's going on in the world, it's inevitable, but there's no way that a proprietor can keep absorbing costs like that on an ongoing basis. If it was a temporary increase, like a temporary increase of oil, and there was an end in sight as to when the price would come back down, then as a business you would think we'll try to absorb that, and then hopefully things will get back to normal. But because there's no end in sight at the moment as to when oil prices will come down, and this global supply chain problem is creating all things to go up in cost, there's no end to them coming back down again. There's no end in sight to that. So it's got to result in a price increase in rents. Even if it's a minimal increase, it's got to. I don't know what he's putting his prices up to, or how much he's putting cabs up by per week, because he hasn't said that. But the inevitable end result is a rent increase.
Yeah. I mean, it says in here, they're increasing their prices for the first time in over 10 years. I don't know how true that is because some people in the comments are saying, well, no, there was a price increase in 2022. So whether that's, I don't know, hearsay or whatever, I don't know the exact prices of this individual garage or sort of other garages, really. But I agree with the sentiment that if it's been 10 years, even 2, 3 years, and there's not been an increase, I think you've got to expect that everything else in life has gone up. Us as cab drivers, we get a meter increase every year, or we've had a meter increase every year. Some have been more substantial because it covered a couple of years where quite a lot happened. And I think it's only natural for cab garages to do this. But a lot of people on Twitter will see this as, oh, all cab garages are greedy and they're just out for themselves. And it's, but it, and some saying supply and demand as well. You know, saying obviously there's quite a high set of people wanting to get in cabs. They're just putting price up for sort of almost for the fun of it, really. But I don't think so. I think it's, you know, it's
But, following on that thread from that tweet that Michael Glassman put out, one guy said something that was quite true. You haven't got to rent.
mm,
If
yep.
you don't like renting, go and buy a cab. I know there are some drivers out there that have been in financial problems and possibly can't get finance, so they are stuck with renting. But then if you're not happy with the garage you're renting from, go to another garage, go to another proprietor. And but I think prices across the board are, let's sort of break it down. If you go and buy a new cab now, yeah, on hire purchase, just on PCP, you're going to be paying around around £1,100 a month on PCP. That's with a balancing payment at the end of it of around
Is that how
£27.
much it is now? That's mad, isn't
About
it? Yeah.
£1,100 on
Yeah.
PCP if you don't put a deposit down on it, which a lot
Yeah.
of proprietors don't put a deposit down, because obviously you're better off using their money than using your own money.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, so they don't put a deposit down; they buy it on PCP, and with the hope that they can rotate the fleet around, or pay off balancing payments with money they've got back from VAT and things like that. So it's different people run their businesses in different ways, but that's the basis of running a cab on a PCP payment, yeah. And don't forget, on top of that, you have got your insurance costs,
hmm
you have got your running costs. Yeah. And by running costs, I mean things like meter rental, overall costs, road tax. You've also then got on top of that servicing costs, which would probably include a set of tyres a year, which is about £500 a year just for a set of tyres. Yeah. So if you add all of those things on top, yeah, I mean, let's get a calculator out
Well, I
here.
worked it out because when I was paying off my cab, I put 5 grand down, and this wasn't on PCP; it was on HP. It worked out. Well, I was paying about roughly £250 a week. It was about £1,100 a month, as you say. But then you have other things, all those other costs. So I can't remember if it was either £400 or it was about £400, I think, a week once you factor in all the other costs of being a cab driver, all the insurance, tyres, tax, blah, blah, all that other stuff. So you, proprietor really, like, as far as I understand it, and maybe I don't understand the business model, maybe I'm entirely wrong here, who knows? But if they were to be buying a cab for the sake of, say, renting it out and making money on the rents, they're spending the first 5 years paying it off, and they've only then got the next 10 years to effectively reap the rewards of that cab.
And that's presuming that cab lasts for 15 years and
Yes.
doesn't get written off in an accident or
Yeah, all the
something.
insurance
Or,
costs and then all the other sort of costs to maintain it along the way as
I mean,
well.
just to buy the cab, just on PCP over a 52-week year is £303 a week. Insurance on top of that is about another £40 a week, probably. So you're now looking at £343 a week, yeah, for a brand new cab. Right, so then put on the other costs of like a meter rental, set of tyres, yeah, and your overall. So you're now looking at another probably £25 a week. So you're looking at 40, 60, let's add £65 onto that. So you're now looking at £368 a week. That's presuming that the cab stays out for 52 weeks of a year.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of people obviously like to. A lot of garages do a holiday plan or whatever, where if you rent from them for the year, they'll give you what up to I don't know what's the weeks they give you. Is it 4 weeks? I'm not
Up
too
to
sure
4
what the
weeks, most of them, yeah. It's a
yeah.
couple, one at Christmas and another week some other time, yeah. But yeah, you're looking at £368 a week. You know, the choice is you can go and buy a cab or you can continue renting one. Now, the pros and cons of buying and renting. Pros and cons of buying and renting. Rent the buying, you've got your own cab, it's yours. At the end of the term, even if you've got a balancing payment on it, you've still got some sort of residual value in it at the end of the term. Even if it's only a couple of £1,000 you've got left in it, depends on how the market's going. Um, if you pay the balancing payment off over another few years or whatever, or if you bought it on hire purchase as you did when you got yours, you've got 5 years freehold on it or 10 years freehold on it, presuming the cab runs for 15 years. Um, and it's your cab. You're not changing cabs. You're in the same cab all the time. But you have got the hassle of covering the maintenance, looking after the cab, making sure you book the overall on time, putting it in for the overall, sorting your insurance out,
No,
road.
negotiating insurance, even just the time spent negotiating insurance. That's the point I'm in at the moment. You're like, oh god, I got a renewal through, and I've got to phone up another company, and I've got to wait for them. I'm still waiting for Quotax to come back to me, for me to then go back to the company I'm with and say, hey, can you beat this price? And then you go back and forth, and that costs you like a day's worth of work doing that.
You know, I can't be asked most of the time.
Yeah,
The funny thing is like I was sitting at the airport the other week, and DCL, Direct Chauffeur Line, they were out there, and they said, "Have you tried us for a quote?" I said, "Yeah." And they said, "What was the quote like?" I said, "I don't know. Didn't get one."
yeah.
I said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, I tried phoning. No one answered. Emailed. No one answered. No one replied." I said, "And I sent a message through on your contact form. No one replied. Oh, can we contact you this year then?" And I said, "Yeah, of course. Here's my phone number. Here's my email address. And here is my renewal date." I said, "It's on the certificate of insurance around there." I said, "I don't know exactly what it is. If you want to go and have a look, say walk round, you wrote it all down. We'll contact you definitely beforehand." I'm still waiting.
Which is odd because I would put them as the sort of most responsive and get back to you and just like, yeah, we can do it. Like they're a very slick operation. I think that's why they've got a lot of cab drivers have gone over to them in recent
Well,
years.
they obviously just don't like me then.
Yeah.
This is
Ain't
like,
you that boy? Ain't you that guy who runs cab chat?
yeah, we ain't having him on here because he'll just slag us off. But yeah, 3 years on trot, and I've not heard anything from them at all.
I mean, that's a separate discussion in itself, insurance. But I feel like if if it just
It all takes time.
it does,
You
but it
don't
does for the insurance end of it as well. Like if they just followed up people, it's amazing how many people they could convert just because
Yeah.
they followed up. You know what I mean? Like I said, I'm still waiting back on a certain quote from someone, and you know, I get it. Like you know, that it's could be a busy industry for them. They've got a lot of people going through renewals and whatever, but like it's amazing. Just a quick follow up call, just go, yeah, here's your price. Do you want to lock in now? Cool. Take my money, but it's probably not going to go that way, and as a result, I'm probably not going to switch.
Yeah. So,
Sorry.
but all of this takes time. You know, getting through to NSL and booking your overall takes time.
Yeah.
And unless you phone on a Sunday, they answer
Well,
straight.
that used to be a nightmare. Like I had, what was the? I had done 4 hours on the. I think it was like 4 hours or 3 hours. I remember I had a day out in London. And I had to get it booked, and it was like there was no other way of getting in contact with them, and I had to do it on the phone, and it was just wait, 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 and you know, I remember it was about 3 hours. I think it was because this is when all their online system wasn't working properly and stuff. Now, luckily, it took me a very long time to get all the online system all coordinated, so I can now do it online. But yeah, again, it's more time that you know you have as
I
owning.
think I didn't even bother with the online system because last time I looked at the online system, it didn't have the cab that I owned on there, but one that I hadn't owned for 3 years on there. So, and it wasn't that cab's not in my name, so I just gave up.
Yeah, that's the other thing of owning a cab. Don't ever change address or anything like that. That's just like
Oh yeah, that's
a
a
nightmare
nightmare.
in itself because it's like if you change address at the time you've got an overhaul coming up, like whoa, you're in a world of pain there.
World of pain.
Yeah.
Just sometimes visiting NSL can be a world of pain as well.
Yes,
Or if something
yes.
goes wrong with your cab when it's out of warranty, that is a whole new world of
I,
pain.
there's drivers out there who've never experienced what it's like to sit at an NSL centre
Yeah.
and just feel how sparse and open that room is when you can hear everyone's heart beating. And it's more than likely going to be okay. It's like, visiting possibly the GP or the dentist, and then you're like, but one time it might not be. It's equal fear and
There's always that
anxiety.
first time, isn't there, when you go there, and these are all the things you have to go through when you own a cab.
Yeah.
And, like tyres, even just going and finding somewhere, phoning around trying to get prices for tyres, and then going and having the tyres fitted as well. Especially if you're working during the daytime, most time there's no tyre places that are open overnight when you can think, I'll pop in there on my way home after I finish at 7 o'clock tonight, I'll pop in and get my tyres done. Because there's nowhere open. They're all closed. And there's no tyre places in the centre of London anymore. They've all gone. All gone. So you've got to travel outside of London to go and get your tyres done now, which means you either take time out of work, and I know this is probably the same for rental drivers. If they've got to go and get a tyre, they've got to go and get a tyre. But a lot of decent garages, they've got tyres in stock, and you can swing by, and they'll put one on for you.
Yeah, you're down there anyway. Like if you're down there for the overhaul or the MOT because you've got to go
Yeah.
take them back to the place,
Or
they're
if you're
just like,
paying your rent or
they'll
whatever.
look at it and they'll go, right, that's our cab. It's a rental cab. We've got to stick a tyre on it because it's worn out. Whereas as an owner, they've got, I've had it at E1 taxis before. They come up and they go, right, tyres gone. Right, we're going to place that one, that one, that one. You got to then mentally sum up like, is it worth me trying to squeeze a bit more life out of those tyres? Do I rotate them? What, you want to put three on? So I now in my head, every time I go to bed at night, it's like, oh, I've got three, one tyre's odd, and that's rattling around in my head.
Can't have that. No, you've got to have 4 new
I
tyres.
can't, I know, but they, whatever happens, you know what I mean? So, but then that's a dilemma I have to deal with every time my head hits the pillow every night.
It's like when I had a puncture and I went into Mad-Ass Tyres down the Old Kent Road, and they wanted to charge me a fortune just for one tyre, £60 more than what I would normally get them for. And he said, listen, I'll put your spare on for you free of charge if you want to go somewhere else. And I went, oh, my spare wheel's clean. I don't want a dirty wheel in my boot.
Yeah.
My boot. I don't want a dirty wheel in the boot.
Yep.
And in the end, he said, well, we'll do the tyre a bit cheaper for you. So it was still more expensive, but it was like, well, do I put a dirty wheel in my boot with all my stuff, or
Which
do
is
I
going to
pay
cause
a bit
more
extra?
problems.
Yeah, no. Yeah, put the tyre on for me, please, mate. Yeah, but that's the sort of dilemmas you get into when you own a cab. I'd be the same if I was renting one, to be honest with you. But
Well,
yeah.
here's another way of looking at it, right? So I've got the Bank of England goods and service sort of inflation calculator here, right? Can you remember what a cab will cost to rent at various points in time? Have you got any numbers?
Yes. Yeah. Right. Okay. Right. 1991.
Okay, 1991. Let's put that date in. Yep.
An E-Reg FX4S Plus was £175 a week, and that was a 3-year-old cab at the time.
3-year-old cab at the time. Okay. Right. Do you know what a TXE currently rents for? Any ideas?
JV Brights, a £375 a week for a 21 plate.
So that's like a 4 or 5-year-old cab.
Yeah, 4 or 5-year-old cab.
Okay. So
I know a mate of mine rents off of Paul, and he's got a 74. He's had it since new. He was the first driver on it, and he's paying £385 a week for that.
Mm-hmm. And I've heard of some being at about the sort of 400 mark for sort of more the newer sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So that £175 in 1991 for a 3-year-old cab. The equivalent today,
I could tell you it's probably near £1,000 a week.
not quite. It's the equivalent cost is £413.
Yeah. I can
So
see
it's a bit more expensive. Technically, it was a bit more expensive back then.
Yep. than it is
In
now.
terms of inflation, yeah.
And considering the cost of the cab as well, I mean, that cab new, that E-Reg Plus new was probably about 16,000 pounds to buy.
£15,000, yeah. Let's just go with the lower end there in 1991. Would have been 35 grand in today's money.
Yeah.
So,
It's 78,000 and something now for a new cab.
so basically, we're saying here that if you was to buy the cab brand new, it's over double the price, but the rent prices are about the same. That gives you sort of the picture that's proprietors have now. Basically, like in the 90s, it would have been like a bit of a cash cow, I guess, to be renting maybe. To then now, it's like, yeah.
Yeah, there's not a lot of money in renting cabs out. The only way you can earn money, a lot of money out of renting cabs out, is purely in numbers.
Yep, scale.
It's a numbers game in scale. I mean, I was always told all the time, if you're going to rent cabs out, there's no point in even considering just renting one or two out. It's a waste of time because the amount of time you will, as the proprietor, spend off the road, not driving your own cab, running around getting problems sorted out on the others, is you're going to lose more money than you're going to gain out of renting one or two cabs out. The minimum number you need is 10. And then you've also got to factor into that if you've got 10 cabs, if you're just a proprietor that's not a cab driver, in reality, you need a spare cab. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
If you're a proprietor that is also a cab driver and you're driving a cab, basically the cab that you're driving, that
Is
is
your spare.
the
Yeah.
spare cab. Yeah. So which means if you get a breakdown, you've got to give your cab over to your driver, and then you're taking the responsibility of the cab that's broken down, which means more time off the road
Yep.
as well.
Yeah, moving
Uh,
around a cab that's broken down, you know?
no, exactly. So it's, for every so many every so many cabs you have, you need a number of spare cabs to get by.
Well, even the logistics of getting it about, obviously a lot of the sort of the more established garages that have been around for quite a while have premises to be able to work on that, which obviously in London, I'm sure isn't cheap.
No,
Um, you know,
premises
you,
are not cheap at all anymore.
Sherbert's just sort of expanded out to West London, and they've got a bit of a hub going on there to service like West London drivers. So you've got all of that logistical demand. I know that Paul from HP, he has a driver who helps him sort of distribute cabs around if they need to go around to different people or whatever. Because if you don't have a hub that people can come to get the cab from you from, then where do you meet? What do you do there? So
It's not too bad if you've got brand new cabs. It's like, my friend Ian that rents off Paul, he's had very, very few problems with the cab. He runs it into E1 for servicing. He takes it over there for the overall. So it's just a bit of time out of his day. And Ian's like that. He likes to look after the cab. So he'd rather take it over there, get it serviced, and, someone come and pick it up and give him a spare, which might be an old, dirty old thing. So he'll quite happily run it around. Um,
but this comes back to the idea of like, where do the garages make their money? Because like you say, it's like, it's not so bad if the cabs are new. It's like,
yeah.
fine, cabs are new, but
Once they start getting older and then start needing work doing on them to go in for the overall, then you're into another whole load of pain as well.
yeah,
Because it's not a matter of, oh, do I put a tyre on? It's no, you've got to. Same as being an owner driver. You've got to put tyres on it. You've got to present it in a decent condition. Any mechanical work that needs doing to it, you're going to have to do it. There's no excuses. Any body work, you're going to have to do that.
yeah.
And the most galling thing is when you think, oh, I've only just replaced that bumper on that cab, and now he's gone and scratched it again. And unless you're going to charge the driver for the damage to the cab, which a lot of garages now do, charge the driver the excess. Or from, if you've scratched the bumper, then, we're going to charge you 250 quid to do it, or we'll put it through the insurance and you're going to pay £500 excess. The driver's going to take the 260 quid.
Well, yeah, I don't know what those excesses run at now, but I remember when I first rented like my TX4, right? I mean, I felt a bit cheated when like there would be like a minor scratch on the bumper, and I'd be charged an excess for them to cover it, which I sort of understand because you know, if 10 drivers, let's say, damage cabs, there's going to be varying degrees of like damage, you know. So let's say like one's quite bad, so then the cheaper ones cover it. So I felt a bit miffed that if I put a small scratch on it, as I did on like a rental cab or whatever, that I'd have to pay that. Especially when the TX4s were just quite a bit more of a basic cab, you know. It's just like it's very much they're almost sort of bodged and cobbled together in many
Well, you
ways.
think they just charge you for the repair rather than the excess, you know what I mean? It's
Exactly, but you
I
could
mean,
sort of see why on mass why a rental garage does that because you know they out of every 10 there might be one that's a bit more serious, right? So it kind of covers it. But more so now, in again in defence of the rental garages, is that you it's a much better vehicle now. It's the TXE. Right, you've got sensors in the bumpers. You know the bumpers are probably a lot more expensive. You can't really you know, bodge them probably in the same way that you could have done with
no,
a
you can't.
TX4. Even, you know, when I was speaking with Jack from, I can't remember the name of his garage, but obviously he's out in Grays. He was telling me that between, I think like between like an 18 plate and like a 20 plate TXE or whatever, they just changed the bumpers entirely. Looks like how it clips on and stuff. There's no different to you or I as to how it looks aesthetically from the outside, but how it fits
Totally.
completely, totally different, you know? So then you can't just have one bumper in stock for all those different ones. You've
No.
got to have lots of different bumpers,
Yep.
which again is the, you know, as the cabs get better, this is the problems that then come into it. And like, as you mentioned at the top of the show, you know, the part supply, even the oil, like you said, because all the oil now, because it's a modern vehicle, is such a thin grade of oil, it's super expensive. It's not like back in the days when you just chuck 2050 in there, treacle.
2050, 1540 I used to put in it. It was like thick old stuff.
Well, 2050 is even thicker, isn't it? That's like
Yeah,
proper motor. That's yeah,
yeah.
we're 1540, but now we're what 020? Super thin stuff.
Yeah, something like that. Um, but yeah, all of these things are a cost, and you know, people that say, "Listen, if you've got 600 cabs, you're earning a decent amount of money out of 600 cabs, but then you've got all the costs to go with it as well."
And as it scales, it's all the
Yeah,
people involved. You know, you've only got
yeah.
to look at like, I guess like Sherbet London or anyone like that. You know, you got receptionists, you got marketing staff, because you need all those things to keep the ship afloat.
You need
Um,
a fleet manager who's going to look after the fleet, book them in for overhauls, get, you know, make sure they're serviced on time and things like that. Because believe me, if you rely on the drivers, a lot of drivers, you get two types of drivers renting a cab. One that treats it exactly as his own cab, like Ian does, and you get the driver that thinks, well, hey, mine, why should I care?
yeah, I'm paying to rent the cab, so
And
you know,
if you think they're going to tell you that the cab's coming up due for a service because they're worried that your warranty is going to go out the window because it ain't been serviced on time, they ain't going to bother. So you need to chase them. And this is why a lot of fleets are going over to the taxi world system because it gives them the mileage. They know what mileage the cab's done. And they can, you know, the telematics they get from that is what's of benefit to them. They can keep an eye on their servicing, their warranties and things like that. Uh, which is good for a fleet. You know, it's a good uh, set of data to have. You know, they can't see what you're earning, but they can see what their cab's doing, and they can see where their cab is as well. Which sometimes, when drivers go AWOL with your cab and they haven't paid you any rent for 3 months, and you can't find your cab, but with that, you know exactly where your cab is.
yeah, it's
So
rogue. I love that this is you know certain things are different to certain different drivers. It's a different job entirely. You have some drivers who are very much ahead of their payments, save whatever, and you have the drivers who can't make rent each week. You know.
listen, well, I've had friends who rented cabs out that have ended up having to report the cab stolen to the police because they have sent the driver numerous messages, letters, and everything regarding the rent that hadn't been paid. They went round to the house and the cab was never there. And then in the end, they had to report it to the police as stolen, which means that the driver then gets arrested and charged with driving without no insurance because basically you no longer have permission to drive the vehicle, so you're not insured. so you get 6 points on your license. But these are all the things, the problems that a proprietor comes up against when renting cabs out to drivers, because not, 90% of drivers are as good as gold. You're always going to get that percentage of drivers that are a little bit rogue and don't really care. And yeah, just
And also as well, like overall sentiment here, because I've just kind of opened up the sort of Twitter thread again and just seeing sort of like the disgust from other drivers and stuff like that. Like in an ideal world, we wouldn't want rents to go up, and it's not like me and Jamie are kicking back now because
we wouldn't want
we're not
price
just
of cabs to go
kicking
up, right?
back. Yeah, we're not just kicking back like, oh yeah, like we've paid off our cabs, we're sort of immune to all this,
I haven't.
because
I'm still paying for
oh,
mine.
sorry, so I didn't know where you was with yours exactly, but yeah,
Oh,
like
so I've got another. Well, I've got it on PCP because the intention was to buy another one. In 4 years' time, I was going to swap it in every 4 years. But with the current situation, I don't know what to do at the moment. But I've got it on PCP, so in 5 years, another 3 years' time, I've got £26,000 balancing payment to pay on it, or do something else. So I haven't paid mine off. But we wouldn't want to see cab prices go up. I'd like the cost of a cab to still be 36,000. We
yeah.
moaned when it went up to £36,000. I'd like to see it still be 36 grand, not 78 grand.
But generally, the overall sentiment is like you want cabs to be
Afford-
affordable for people to be able to get in them, for fleets to be kind of at maximum occupancy, and cabs about and making the service reliable. And this could be another thing that people, or like taxi drivers who might be near the edge of quitting or something, can go, oh, you know what? It's a little bit more difficult for me to find that. Like some drivers would say, okay, what's an extra, I don't know how much he's putting it up by, let's say an extra 20 quid or an extra 10 quid a week. What is that? But, in the climate that we find ourselves in, and,
£40
how
a month,
different people load up, it's, yeah, yeah,
£480 a year.
yeah.
When the cost of everything else is going up around you, like electricity, gas, food, it's all extra money you've got to try to find. And, it's all right saying, oh, it's only an extra £10 a week. That's £10 a week there, £10 a week on your electricity, £10 a week on your gas. You can quite easily be up to having to find another £100 and £150 a week. It ends up becoming a struggle. And I'd like to see cabs at a price where it's affordable, where you haven't got to go to work 6 days a week, where you can think, I've only got to do 3 days a week if I just want a very basic living, but that'll pay for me cab and give me a little bit of money. And if I want a decent living, I can work 5 days a week. If I want a good living, I can work 6 or 7 days a week. But at the moment, that's not the case. The case is you have got to work 5 days minimum.
Yeah.
Minimum.
Yeah.
Normally 6 days, just to make it pay, really, and to get yourself a decent living out of it.
Well, also because in those 5-6 days, and this is probably good for someone who's coming through on the knowledge or whatever to give a bit of an understanding, is that there might be like a good outlier of those days. So I find now, since COVID, work can be a little bit more sporadic in that one day to the next might have a bit more of a variation and fluctuation in it. It's a bit like the idea of you could come out and work for, say, 5 hours. You might have some luck, but in general, you're going to be better off doing your full shift of 9 hours, 10 hours, because you're going to be more likely to get your earnings or whatever.
Yeah. And if you want to see a very good video about that, just go and watch our video about Heathrow Airport, where I had a good day and Tom had an extremely bad day for basically the same hours. I think I did about an hour and a half more than you, didn't I? And took twice as much money.
But if we carried that example out across the week, I'm sure we would have been a lot more sort of closer overall.
Yeah, over a week. Yeah.
And that's kind of it, really. It's the consistency of it. So anyone who wants to sort of become a cab driver, I think you might be able to agree, and you was probably saying with the sentiment there, that the sort of idea of working part-time is quite a bit more of a difficult proposition now.
Now it is. I mean, you can't, there's very few proprietors that will rent you a cab on a daily basis. Whereas years ago, if you went to a proprietor and said, I want a cab just for a weekend, a lot of them would say, well, you can take the spare cab but if we get a breakdown, you're going to have to bring it back. But they're very reluctant to do that now,
Yeah.
because with the LEVCs where they don't tend to break down as much, they run a lot fewer spare cabs than what used to be the case with the Fairways or TX2s or TX4s. Garages would always have a spare TX4 or Fairway laying about that was the spare, or they'd have a couple of them. If they rented them out of a weekend, that was a bit of bonus for them. And it was always on the understanding that if they did have a breakdown, they'd call you and you'd be, all right, yeah, no problem, I'm on my way with it, yeah, and you take it back. But you've only got to take Paul Byron as an example. He hasn't got a garage, and I think he runs a couple, maybe one or two spare cabs, possibly the one that he's driving and the guy that does the delivering the cabs for him drives, unless he's got drivers that are on holiday or whatever. And things like that. And then he might have a spare sitting there from a holiday or something like that. But other than that, he's not got if he's got 100 cabs, he's not got 10 cabs lined up against the wall as spare cabs. You just don't have that anymore,
And I think other broader economic factors play into this as well, whereby maybe in times gone by, more people live nearer to London. You had a taxi garage nearer to you that you could maybe, I may walk to, get a short sort of tube ride, taxi ride, whatever, to go pick it up. But with a lot of drivers living further afield now, if you do want to go rent for a weekend or like a couple of days or whatever, if they're available, I think Sherbet does weekend or daily rentals, from what I've heard. Colts used to, I know they did. I don't know if they still do now. You've got to take a good train ride, get up early to get there. I had a mate who did it before the pandemic. He would go down to Colts. He would sort of get in a bit of a queue of the weekend drivers who'd go down there to go rent a cab. You have to get up really early to do it, pay your train fare, get in the cab. Cab might be dirty, so you've got to spend a bit of time cleaning it to go out and have it for the weekend, go earn a few quid. And this was on top of the fact you already had like a job anyway.
Yeah.
So it is, yes, it's a lot more difficult to do it part time. It is a bit more of a full time occupation.
Well, the other factor is when fleets were running things like Fairways, the cost of a Fairway brand new basic was 17 grand. So if you had an older one sitting against the wall, it might be worth 6,000-7,000. Yeah, you got a second-hand, half-decent TXE sitting against the wall. You're looking at 35 grand sitting there.
Yeah.
So if you had 5 Fairways sitting against the wall that were your spares or your part-timers and things like that, you might have like 30 grand's worth of vehicles sitting there. Whereas if you've got 5 TXEs sitting against the wall, yeah, you're talking about like nearly 200 grand sitting there.
Well, you say that, but I mean, what's the inflation I've got here? So like 6 grand in 1991 is what you're talking about? That's 14 grand in today's money.
So you're looking at more than twice the value of vehicles sitting against the wall.
Yeah.
And that's another factor. People haven't got that sort of spare cash laying around to have vehicles just sitting there doing nothing. The idea of renting a cab out is you've got to earn money out of it. You can't have them just sitting against the wall, looking pretty and thinking, oh, well, might have someone come along this weekend and wants to rent it. And then no one comes and, well, someone will rent it next weekend. You can't run a business like that.
You know what
that
it is?
Vehicle's got to be earning money.
I've figured this out. It's the owner drivers that are a problem, Jamie. There's too many owner drivers.
Really?
If there was less owner drivers, we'd all be renting, and then the fleets would be able to make a little bit more money, and then they wouldn't have to charge such high prices.
That's the problem then.
Because once upon a time, it was all proprietor-led, right? I mean, back in the...
Well, yeah. Back in the...
We'll have to get an expert on, I think, in the future.
Yeah, we're going to have to get an
expert
on to talk about this, yeah. Someone who's been driving a cab for a very long time. I don't know of anybody. Do you know of anybody? You'll have to wait and see who that's going to be.
What a bombshell to end this episode on.
Yeah, exactly. And if you've got a comment on renting versus buying, or, why cabs rents are so high, or do you think they're reasonable, or do you think, that cab rents should be lower, leave a comment down below, or send us a message, or comment on X. It used to be called Twitter. Yeah. And don't forget to come along to our Fish and Chip Club meets every second Tuesday of the month at Kennedy's, Goswell Road at 7 p.m.
Yeah, our next one will be there. Might have already gone out at this point, but we'll be there on the 9th of June and the 14th of July.
And then when we're going to be there in August, Tom? What's the date
Ooh,
in August?
August. I didn't get that far ahead. That would be the 11th of
The
August.
11th of August. There you go. See? So we're thinking way, way ahead at the moment because we've got so many episodes actually recorded that we don't know when they're going out. So until the next time, I've been Jamie the Cabbie.
Tom, the taxi driver. See you again soon.
Be lucky.
Bye bye.